The book of Ruth opens with these words, "In the days when the judges ruled." From this we know that the events in the book of Ruth takes place sometime after the Israelites enter the promised land. When the Israelites are in Egypt, their numbers increase. They go from under 100 people to a nation of over hundreds of thousands of people. And fearing the Israelites, the Egyptians rise up against them and force them into slavery. After about 400-ish years, God sends Moses to lead the people out of Egypt and out of slavery. During this time, in the wilderness, Moses leads the people and acts as a go-between between God and the people during the 40-year wandering. Now, when the Israelites finally arrive at the Jordan, ready to cross over into the promised land after the 40 years of wandering, Moses dies and Joshua is chosen to lead, or by God, to lead the people in the next phase of the Israelites' journey. And that phase would be the taking of the promised land. So Joshua leads the campaign into the promised land. He conquers much territory, and he allots the different tribes their different portion of land for their inheritance. Now eventually Joshua dies, leaving no one as leader of the people of Israel while they're in their new home. Now, things don't go very well for the people in the land of promise after Joshua's death. Oppression from the inhabitants of the various lands around them, or even the land that they are in, lead the people into a time of turmoil, we'll say. The oppression of the Israelites is frequent, and often it is fierce. During these times, God raises up individuals who deal with the opposition that the people are facing, and then they lead the people until their death. This is the time of the judges, the time of the setting of Ruth, or the story of Ruth. And on page 13 of your study guide, you will find a table of the judges. So as you go through your study this week, and even into your further studies in the weeks ahead, I encourage you to refer back to this table. Now, the time of the judges spans many years. The number of years that it spans, we don't actually know. We do not even know if some of the judges were judging all of Israel or just their particular tribe or area of Israel. We don't even know if there might have been multiple judges all judging at the same time, like maybe in Ephraim, and another judge maybe judging in Judah at the same time. We just do not know that. And so it makes it difficult to figure out exactly the timeline. We also don't have all the information as to when the judges judged land, or how the various people groups oppressed the Israelites, like how long that was. So we can't just add up some dates or some numbers that Scripture gives us and come up with an exact timeline. Plus, the book of Judges does not mention a famine, which the book of Ruth does. So again, it is impossible to come up with a sure time of when Ruth takes place during the period of Judges. But let's see if we can take an educated guess. Now, take a look at your table of Judges on page 13 in your study guide. The book of Ruth could be during the time of Gideon. Now, why do I say this? Well, because the Midianites, if you were to read Judges chapter 6, verses 1 to 6, you'll see that the Midianites would come and destroy the crops, the Israelites' crops. Now, this is the only time that a food shortage is mentioned in the book of Judges, so it could be considered a famine. However, that seems too late if you consider genealogy. Yes, people, it's one of those times that genealogy is actually significant and useful. We know that Boaz's parents are Salmon and Rahab, and we know this from Matthew 1, chapter 5. Feel free to go and brush up on your genealogy of Jesus. Now, just to refresh your memory, Rahab is the prostitute from Jericho that helps the Israelite spies to get out of Jericho safely. And you can read about that in Joshua chapter 2. Now, she only becomes a part of the Israelite nation after the Israelites have taken Jericho when they first enter the Promised Land. Therefore, taking the rough ages that Salmon and Rahab and even Boaz would be, you take all of those things into consideration, Ruth most likely takes place within the first 100-ish years of Israel first entering the Promised Land. Now also consider that the very young generation that had witnessed all God's wonders in Egypt with the 10 plagues and being a part of the Exodus, as children, they would have been children, and they grow up during the 40 years of desert wandering, and then they also experience all that God does during those 40-year period, and who finally take the promised land. They all die before the time of the judges. Therefore, it would seem likely that the time of Ruth was near the beginning of the time of the judges. Say around, if you're looking at your table of judges, around Othniel or Ehud, when either one of those was judging the land. Now this gives us a rough idea of what the people have been through up to this point and where they are in their development as a nation and as a society. So if Ruth's story takes place during the time of Ehud, well, that makes it even more interesting. And we'll see that as we go through this week. Now, I'm sure some of you are sitting there wondering, why does this matter? Like, does this matter? Well, consider this. What is going on in the world affects how we feel, what we think, how we act. Consider what is going on in our world today. Right now, currently today, it's 2021. We just went through 2020. So consider what's going on in our world today. Consider how the decisions of government in the past year or so affect our day-to-day living. Think about how we base what we do and where we go based on current events. Our entire culture is shifting due to that one significant event of last year. Even our religious beliefs and the way we practice those beliefs, the way we live out those beliefs, is affected by this. So yes, knowing what is going on in the background of the story of Ruth, it matters. It helps us to understand. And to help us to get a better understanding of the religious, political, and social culture of Ruth's day, which will help us in turn to understand what's happening in Ruth, we're going to be spending our first week in the book of Judges. So this week, follow the readings and answer the questions in the study guide. But do not forget to watch the discussion video that will be released on Saturday. As you study, try to imagine your life if you lived during the time of the judges. Remember, this is still a patriarchal society, which means that the male heads of the families were boss, right? They were the rule makers. Much was expected of the men. So consider yourself as a man during this time. I mean, a lot was expected, and there was significant pressure on men. And women had no say in things and were basically at the mercy of the men. So if you're a woman, consider that as you go through the book of Ruth. Remember too that there was no government welfare system mandated, only the laws that God commanded regarding care for the less fortunate. So if people are not religious, where do those who are struggling turn? Right? What help is there for them? So what is going on in the world during the time of Ruth matters. It helps us to understand what people are doing, why they're doing it, how they're feeling, and the triumphs and the highs and the lows of what they're going through. Most importantly, remember that these are real people with real feelings and real fears and duties. by putting yourself in the position of Naomi, Ruth, Boaz, even the primary kinsman redeemer, although he's only mentioned briefly. But as you put yourself in the position of these people, you will get a very real understanding of what they face emotionally, mentally, and that type of thing. And it will help you to connect. Connect with the people. Connect with the story. It will not just be some story that you know is important because it's in the Bible, but it doesn't feel real. Like a legend or a myth that we romanticize. It won't be like that. Instead, it will become an actual event to us, to you and me, and with real significance in our lives. It is my hope and prayer that the truths in the book of Ruth will become a part of you and draw you closer to the Lord as you continue in your faith journey with the Lord. And so I wish you happy studying.